Good morning, dear students of Junior 5, and welcome to our lesson today. Today, we're going to learn how to write an adventure story. Okay, I know that some of you might think that this is difficult, but actually, it isn't. It is so much fun once you learn all the rules and ways to write a perfect story. So, this is what we're going to learn in our lesson today. We're going to see all the details and all the divisions that we've made for you in order to be able to write your story. Okay, what is a short story? Let's read together. A short story is a fictional work of prose that is shorter in length than a novel. So a story is shorter than a novel. A novel can take a whole book, but a story should be shorter. Also, fictional means it can all be the creation of your mind. It doesn't have to be based on real events like a newspaper article, but rather a fictional tale that you can actually create everything about it, starting from where it takes place to the characters and up to the very end where everything gets resolved. So, what are the elements of a short story? Short story have to have all these elements, starting from the settings, and this is where the story is taking place and when, also the characters, people, and their description and the relationship to each other and how they are going to create the story. Plot. The plot here is what happens in the story, okay? And the plot normally takes the shape of a curve where the action starts building up ascendingly one after another in order to create the climax. This is the highest when a problem here reached the top point and everything gets complicated right before it starts to descend again by the characters starting to resolve the situation and up to the very end of the story, and we write an ending and how everybody felt. The conflict is the problem in the story. Every story has to have a conflict in order for the reader to keep interested and follow the actions in order to know what happens in the end and how it gets resolved. And of course, the theme, whether it's dramatic story, a historical story, an adventure story. So we give it a theme. This is like the atmosphere of the story. Okay, let's start by taking one of these points one by one and discuss it in details. We start by the settings. The settings tell us the where and when the story takes place. So we begin by saying the settings of the story to make the reader knowing when and where the story is taking place so they can imagine the actions while they happen. Okay, so let's take, like, for example, the famous story of the Little Red Riding Hood. Of course, we know this famous story with a girl who was going through the dark forest wearing a red cape, visiting her grandmother. She was ill, her grandmother was ill, and she was trying to bring her food and fresh bread. And along in the dark forest, there was an evil wolf. Can you see how the story here has a conflict? An evil wolf who wants to eat the girl. So he goes to her grandmother's house and dresses up like her grandmother and acts like it's her in order for the girl to come without warning, and he immediately tries to hunt her and eat her. So, whether or not the wolf will manage to do that, this is what goes on during the story, and we know at the end. Okay, now let's look at the characters. How do we create characters? Creations of imaginary people. We can create how many people are going to be in the story, what they do, how they look like, what are the relationships of between them, and everything. We can just decide what we want to do, even the names. Okay, so people who appear to be real to the reader. The writer gives information about the characters in the story. Okay, who can tell me the characters of the Little Red Riding Hood? We have, of course, the heroine of the story, the little girl in the red cape. We have the villain of the story, the evil part of the story, and this is the wolf. And we have her grandmother. Okay, so let's take a look at the characters here. A little girl around 7 or 8 years old, dressed in red, carries a basket and likes to pick flowers in the wood. She has a high pitched, innocent voice. So, this is a detailed description of the heroine of our story here. And character number two is an elderly woman who is not feeling very well. Today, she has a weak, scratchy voice that trembles a little. She likes to call the wolf Sonny. Okay, and this is information about her grandmother who is sick. Okay, and then we have the villain, the bad guy, and this is a hairy beast with long teeth and a fake smile who likes to trick little children and eat grandmothers. He's a medium pitched, sneaky kind of voice. Notice how the author here is has importance of their voices and how they sound like. A strong, brave man who carries an axe. He has a deep, rich voice. So these are the characters of the story Little Red Riding Hood. Now we're going to take a look at the plot. Okay, like the series of events that take place in the story. A series of events through which the writer reveals what is happening to whom and why. We were sure everything was ready, but then we discovered some unexpected problems. Okay, so if you take a look at the picture, you will notice how the plot, as I told you earlier, takes the shape of a curve starting from the beginning, and the actions start to rise with the beginning of the problem until it reaches its climax, the highest point of the problem, and this is exactly the middle of the story. And then the action starts to fall towards the end, and the characters start to find solutions in order to resolve the story, and the ending is about this result after they resolved the story and how everybody felt after that. And of course, this is all is a creation of the writer. So in this case, it's going to be you. You will let your imagination take you to where the story and the characters are going to be and how they're going to act and what's going to happen in the end. Okay? The conflict is a problem in the story that needs to be resolved. This is mainly what the story goes about. Okay, something happens, and this is the interesting line of the story. So, in order to keep a reader interested, you have to give him a problem and a resolution. Okay, what is the problem here? Let's find out. And at the end, we have the last point, which is the theme. The theme is the story's main ideas, the message. What do you want to tell your readers while you were writing this story? What do you want them to learn? Okay, the writer intends to communicate by telling the story. Who can help me to write the theme of Little Red Riding Hood? The theme here, or the main idea, the author here wanted to teach every one of the readers reading the story that never talk with strangers. It's very dangerous to talk with strangers. Okay, so this is a practice story. Let's look at how it's written and how it's divided, and we can take an example of it in order to help us write and create our story. First, we begin with the title, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Here, the title is brief, that means it's short, still gives us information and it's interesting. There is a boy who called out, Wolf, Wolf. We can understand here that there was a problem, that the boy was in some sort of trouble and he was crying out, Wolf. So, this is an interesting and short title that makes a reader interested to know more. So we begin the first paragraph here by giving information about what did we say we have to know to tell to our readers to know? Yes, the settings. We have to tell them when and where the story took place. There once was a shepherd boy. A shepherd here means a boy who looks after sheep, who was bored as he sat on the hillside watching the village sheep. So his feelings, he was bored. To amuse himself, he took a great breath and sang out, "Wolf, wolf, the wolf is chasing the sheep." Was that real? No, the author here made it obvious by saying he was amusing himself. The villagers came running up the hill to help the boy drive the wolf away, because as we all know, that wolf frightens the sheep and might eat one of them. So if a shepherd is crying wolf, this is like a danger alert that makes everybody go and tries to help. But when they arrived at the top of the hill, they found no wolf. The boy laughed at the sight of their angry faces. "Don't cry, wolf, shepherd boy," said the villagers. They gave him an advice. When there is no wolf, they went grumbling back down the hill. So a villager advised the boy that it's very wrong to cry out to cry out wolf when it's a lie, because he made an alert of danger to everyone. Everyone was scared. They went out the hill, they went up the hill to help the sheep and the boy, but they found that it was a joke, a silly one they didn't enjoy. So, this is the first paragraph. We understood the theme here and the setting. It's in the village and it's up the hill. There is a boy and he's looking after the sheep. As he is shepherd, he feels bored and he tried to amuse himself. Okay, we use linking words in order to make the story come together as one piece, not divided, so not in order not to confuse or distract the readers. We have to make it like a whole body. Okay, so we use linking words like later followed by a comma. The boy sang out again, "Wolf, wolf, the wolf is chasing the sheep." To his naughty delight, he watched the villagers run up to the hill to help him drive the wolf away. When the villagers saw no wolves, they sternly said, "Save your frightened songs for when there is really something wrong. Don't cry wolf when there is no wolf." But the boy just grinned like he frowned and watched them go grumbling down the hill once more. Later, he saw a real wolf prowling about his flock. Alarmed, he leaped to his feet and sang out as loudly as he could, "Wolf! Wolf!" But this time, the villagers thought he was trying to fool them again, and so they didn't come. So this is the middle and the body of the story. This is the middle part, as we learned in the plot, that we have to make the problem reach its highest point, the climax. So our problem here is that the boy went on amusing himself by fooling the villagers and making a trick on them by calling out wolf when there was no real or actual danger. And when a wolf truly appeared this time and he really scared the sheep and the boy was alarmed, he tried to call for rescue, but the villagers have already had enough of his silly jokes. So because he was telling lies, they didn't believe him this time. So the boy was in actual danger. So, in the third paragraph, we're going to descend and reach a resolution, and we're going to learn how the story ends and how everybody felt. So, let's read it. At sunset, everyone wondered why the shepherd boy hadn't returned to the village with their sheep. They went up the hill to find the boy. They found him weeping. He was crying. There really was a wolf here. The sheep have run away. I cried out, "Wolf, why didn't you come?" An old man tried to comfort the boy as they walked back to the village. "We'll help you look for the lost sheep in the morning," he said, putting his arm around the youth. Nobody believes a liar even when he is telling the truth. And the last line in bold here is the theme of the story, the message the author wants to deliver to his reader. What you have to learn is that nobody believes a liar because he always tells lie. Even when the liar finally speaks out the truth, people will not believe him because they call him a liar now and they say that he always lies. This is our theme of the story. See, it's very easy how to write a story and make it interesting if we follow just our rules to write an adventure story. Let's take a look at the elements of the story explained here. First, the story title, the author, a person who writes the story. The title, as we said, has to be short, brief, and interesting. And then we have the setting. The settings is in the first paragraph. We have to write the place and the time the actions are taking place and the events of the story are happening. And then we follow them by a description of the characters in order to make them real to the readers. After that, in the second paragraph, is the plot, the events. We make them escalate to reach the climax is the highest point of the problem, and then they start descending in the third paragraph by finding a resolution, and we end up by the theme or the lesson learned from the story. See, it's very easy once you know how to write it, how to divide it, how to fill up every section by the correct information needed. You will end up writing a perfect story. Here are some words that are going to help you to write better if you use them and include them inside the story. Let's read them together. Cautiously, like with care. Unease, uncomfort, or uneasy feeling. Panic, like everybody's scared. Tremble, when the body shakes. Out of the corner of my eye, like when I'm not really looking straight, but I'm looking by the side of my eye. Silently, with no sound. Distress, that's a lot of frowning and discomfort. Nervously, when someone is not calm. All of a sudden, that's a surprise, that's shocking, like something that happened without a warning. From the shadows, that means something that wasn't expected, something was hidden. Suddenly, all of a sudden, something that happened without warning, dread, to hate. I hate this problem. Shudder means to move your shoulders. Held my breath is like to stop breathing for a second because you're scared or worried. In alarm, that means that there is a feeling of danger in my mind, so I am behaving in alarm. I'm behaving cautiously. Horror means scare or fear. Fright, scary, something that is thrilling. Unexpectedly, something that was not expected. Trick of the imagination, something that you thought but it wasn't real. Ice cold draft means something that was freezing cold. Okay, you have to choose an interesting and eye catching title to grab the reader's attention and tempt them to read your story. It also has to be brief and to the point. In the paragraphing, tips to write a perfect adventure story. Let's look at the paragraphs here and how they are divided. The story must be well organized. That's why you have to write it in at least three paragraphs. We start by introduction and include the setting in it. Introduce your story, introduce your characters, describe the setting by telling the place, time, weather in details. Now you begin the story. The main body is the plot. Write about all the details of the adventure. Use as many linking words as possible. Don't write anything about the ending yet. Why? Because we go to the third paragraph, which we call it the conclusion, where we descend towards the resolution and the ending of the story. End your story according to your opinion, happy ending or sad ending. This is left for you to decide. Write about the characters' feelings at the end. Don't forget to use linking words and also use the lesson learned from the story to write it at the ending of your story. Don't forget to intend. Leave a space in the beginning of each paragraph. And if you follow these rules, you will be able to write an adventure story that's very interesting for every reader and also very correct. Sequencing steps. Sequencing means what to write before the other, refers to the order in which events happened. Sequencing is often made easier by the use of transition words. Following are some of the most common words and expressions used to sequence when writing or speaking. Beginning your story. Create the beginning of your story with these exceptions. Use a comma after the introductory phrase. First of all, to start off with, initially, to begin with. These are words you can start your first paragraph with, and don't forget to follow them by a comma. Examples of these beginning phrases in use include to begin with, comma, space, I began my education in London. First of all, comma, space, I opened the cupboard. To start off with, comma, space, we decided our destination was New York. Initially, comma and space, I thought it was a bad idea. So these are all phrases that you can start your adventure story with. This goes in the first line of your first paragraph. Continuing the story. You can continue the story with the following expressions or use a time clause beginning with as soon as or after. When using a time clause, use the past simple after the time expression, such as then, comma, after that, comma, next, comma, as soon as slash when plus a full clause, then comma, dots, and then but then immediately, comma. These are some examples. Notice how we followed these time expressions with using the past tense. Then, comma, space. I started to get worried. After that, comma, space, we knew that there would be no problem. Next, comma, space, we decided on our strategy. As soon as we arrived, we unpacked our bags. We were sure everything was ready, but then we discovered some unexpected problems. Immediately, I telephoned my friend Tom. So these linking words and continuing the story can take place in the second paragraph where you write your plot by explaining to the readers how the action started to ascend all through to the climax, and then you're going to take them all through to the conclusion paragraph where things start to resolve and reach an ending for the story. Interruptions and adding elements to the story. You can use the following expressions to add suspense to your story, like saying suddenly or unexpectedly. Example for using these interrupting phrases or turning to a new element include suddenly a child burst into the room with a note from Mrs. Smith. Unexpectedly, without no warning, the people in the room didn't agree with the mayor. Ending the story. Mark the end of your story with these introductory phrases. Finally, in the end, eventually, and of course, they're all followed by commas. Examples of using these ending words in a story include finally, I flew to London for my meeting with Jack. In the end, he decided to postpone the project. Eventually, we became tired and returned home. When you tell stories, you will also need to give reasons for actions, review tips on linking your ideas, and providing reasons for your actions to help you understand how to do so. And if you follow all these rules, you divided your story correctly and you followed the rules of every paragraph, if you used all the linking words, and if you put your ideas and events in the right order, you will come up with a perfect adventure story. And this is the end of our writing lesson. I hope now you can be able to practice by writing your first adventure story. See you in the next writing lessons where we can learn more types of stories to write. Thank you, students, and goodbye.